Hey there, Canby. I'm Jennifer Schurter. I'm a real estate agent with Real Broker, and I also just happen to be a fellow Canby resident. Canby has been our family home for the last about 17 years now, and I grew up on a farm just outside of Donald. So this area has meant a lot to me. I've been here my whole life, and we love it. We love being a part of this community. And one of the things I wanted to do, and I promised on Canby Now, was that I would bring a monthly market update for what's happening. So anyone out there in the community that's curious about what's going on in the real estate world, or even what's happening potentially with their home value or home equity, this could be one way that you could keep track of what's happening and maybe have a counterpoint to some of those very negative headlines that are out there, which I'm sure if you're like most people, you've seen some of those for yourself. So we're going to talk about a few things. The first thing we're going to talk about is the Market Action Report, which is a report that covers the Portland, Oregon metro region, which Canby is a part of. The second thing we're going to talk about is we're going to break down what's happening in our local area here in Canby. Real estate's hyper local by nature, so that is what this report is here. We will come back to it. Real estate's hyper local, so what's happening in our backyard is the most impactful for us as we think about what's happening in real estate. And finally, we'll touch on a little bit on what's happening with home equity for you potentially, what all of this actually means for you and your home equity, because I know that that's a big question for a lot of people. So let's get started. Here's the Market Action Report. This just came out yesterday. So today's March 6th, 2024. And there's going to be a lot of information on here. We're not going to touch on all of it. If you happen to want a copy of this, I'm happy to send it to you. So just let me know, send me a comment or send me a direct message, whatever works for you. I'd be happy to connect with you on that. So a few things I wanted to start with. First of all, let's take a look at this box over here on the right, this inventory months and what that means. So it goes back in time a little bit, 2022 through 2024. So if we look at February, this information is all going back a month. So this is all of the sales and data information compiled from February. So we always get it and it's in arrears in a sense. So it's always a month in the past. So according to that data, we have 2.8 months of inventory. And what does that mean? That means it would take about 2.8 months to sell all of the homes that are currently on the market, assuming no others were also added to the market. So no new listings. What we've got is what we've got in this scenario, and it would take 2.8 months to sell them all. We had 3.2 months of inventory in January, so we've come down a little bit. If you look at December of 2023, we were at 2.7 months of inventory. So historically speaking, you could look at several years in the past, but historically speaking, it's pretty accurate to say that looking at December to January, inventory always goes up in January because of the holidays. Things tend to slow down in about mid-December and start to pick back up after we hit the first of the year. So for February, it's a common saying in the real estate world that once you hit the Super Bowl, that kind of marks the start of the spring market. That's when things really start to ramp up. I would say this year, interestingly enough, because coming into January, we had some lower interest rates. We went from about 8% in October and came down pretty rapidly in December to 6.85 and below at that point. That really sparked a lot of activity from people. So that was really exciting to see those rates come down. And what that means for people is interest rates being lower means lower mortgage payments. So activity started to pick up and we're starting to get momentum into the spring market right now. Also of note with these inventory in months conversation, another point of note with 2.8 months is that we like to consider in the real estate world that 6 months of inventory or less is considered a seller's market. We are at 2.8 months in the Portland metro area. That means that we're technically in a seller's market looking at that rule. If we think about what happened a few years ago during the unicorn years of COVID, when houses were selling, we were doing a lot more transactions. And that inventory number, if you go back here, even to early 2022, was super low. We were under a month of inventory, but we were doing a ton of transactions at that time. So it was artificially seemed low because things were moving so quickly. As opposed to today, we're truly in a low inventory situation. If you ask anybody who's out there shopping for a home right now, the common thing that they say is, what do I buy? What is there for me to buy? There's not much to pick from. So what we've got is what we've got. There's no quick sales like we were having a few years ago. So we'll move on from that. So over here, we've got a bunch of verbiage here talking about pending closed sales. What I can tell you is that pending sales are up from February of 2023 and closed sales are down from 2023. A couple other interesting pieces here to touch on that I will bring to your attention. So this is a great little summary graph that shows everything. So for most people, two things they care about when it comes to homes in the Portland metro area, or if they're a homeowner wondering about what homes are selling for. So if we look at the average sale price for the metro right now in February of 2024, it's coming in at $576,900. So about $577,000. If we look at our total market time, it is sitting at 89 days. That's a pretty significant jump. In January, we were at 69 days. So homes are taking longer to sell. And interestingly enough, here's another interesting piece. The average sale price in the metro is up 1.4%. Yes, homes are taking longer to sell, but the average price over February of 2023 is up modestly. So definitely not going backwards in any respect. So it's taking about 90 days, let's call it 90 days to sell. And our average sale price in the metro is $577,000 or thereabout. So that's the Portland, Oregon metro region as a whole. Again, this little map right here shows you the entire region that it is covering for. So all those counties are considered to be covered within this report. So what about Canby? Let's dig into our local area. So as opposed to that previous report, which was from February, so it's the prior month's data, this is an Altos report. This report is current. This report is released weekly. So this is the most up-to-date information that we can get for our local area. So it's very handy to look at. And again, there's lots of data on here. So we're only going to look at a couple things that most people would tend to care about. This particular report does not show an average sale price. It does show median list price and median price of new listings. Here in Canby, our median price, median being the middle, if we took all the data set, all of the prices in town that are for sale, this is our middle point. So our median list price comes in at about $665,000. New homes, or homes that are new to the market, are coming in at about, let's call it $680,000. Here in Canby, they do give us on this report an average days on market. So we're above the Portland, Oregon metro for average time on market, which was 89 days. Here in Canby, our average time is 113 days. So we're trending ahead of the Portland metro, and the median from that is about 56 days. I have one thought in theory as to why it is that our average days on market is so high here in town and our median is about 56. And I would argue that that's because here in Canby, we have a lot of new construction. And if you go on any of the sites that you like to look at that tells you about what houses are available for sale, you'll start to see here in town that there's a lot of new houses, and you can see that they've been on the market for a while. So that could tend to skew some of these averages to be a little bit higher. The other thing that's interesting is our inventory. This shows we have 55 homes on the market that are active for sale right now. These are only homes that are completed that if you were to buy it, you could move into right away. So these are only homes that you could close on and have your keys and move your stuff in right away. These are not the proposed new construction that they haven't broken ground on yet and have not received something called a certificate of occupancy. So that is our inventory, 55 homes here in the Canby area. So let's take a look at something kind of interesting. This report has this interesting graph that shows you the median list price. It goes all the way back to September of 2019. So we got a good amount of history on here showing us in this graph what's happened with the median list price over time here in Canby. So you can see down here in let's call it mid 2019, we were in the mid-high fours for our median list price. And as we accelerate into the COVID years, you can see we peaked over here in, let's call it August, late summer of 2021. And then we continued on and it dropped a little bit, but it's kind of leveled off. And we've got these little cycles of highs and lows. So overall, things have leveled out depending on how long you've lived in Canby or how long you've owned. If you've owned your home here in town for 5 years or so, you've had some pretty substantial growth over the last several years. Even, I don't know, late 2021, you're still looking at mid 2021, you're still looking at some pretty good growth. There's some talk, if you look at the national projections and what they're talking about, that we could see some modest growth this year. We're not going to see 20% growth. They're predicting, these are predictions, of course. Somebody's looking at a crystal ball and they're saying, based on the best data we have, we could see something in the neighborhood of 5% appreciation. So, if you're thinking about what could be coming in the future for you and in your home equity, I would say you could count on modest appreciation. I personally am not going to put a number on that, but I would say be prepared for modest appreciation. I don't necessarily see things being negative or going backwards, but I think modest. A moderate amount of growth is reasonable to expect. And folks, real estate is a long-term game also. So it's not something for those out there who there's some pessimists out there in the real estate world or who are looking at the real estate market to say that, there's no chance you could ever make any equity. I think you have to consider it for the long term. And as you can see, that the benefit for folks with this graph right here, you can see it. Those who bought prior to 2019, they've been in their home, they've owned it a long time. The appreciation that they've seen is a long-term thing. So my suggestion would be continue to keep the long view on any thoughts that you might have about the real estate market and appreciation. Just like the stock market, you're going to see ebbs and flows in that. It's not something I would recommend checking on every single month unless you're in a stage of life where you're getting ready to sell your property to move up or move down. But I would say that plan for modest growth. And I think for the most part right now, my prediction is that home values are pretty stable. So if you're looking at your home equity report, my best bet would be you're going to see modest growth. So hope that helped everybody. And again, if you have questions or you want to talk about what's happening further, or maybe you're curious about your particular property, I'm happy to help with that. You can send me a message. But otherwise, I hope this was useful, and I'll see you around town. Thanks for watching.